All right, we have a special guest, Quincy Larson, the teacher, I believe is how you prefer to be called, at FreeCodeCamp. Someone I've somewhat considered a bit of a mentor. I've been following your career for quite a bit, and FreeCodeCamp was instrumental in me getting my first software job, but I'm very glad to have you on the channel today.
Hey, thanks for having me back.
Yeah, last time we were talking about the upcoming content that was being added to FreeCodeCamp. And circle back to now, it's out, and I've actually had a chance to play around with it, dive into it, and I'm really excited about it. I can't count the number of times people have asked me, "Hey, Dylan, where's a good place to host my Node application, my web server, so that I can put it out there on the web?" Well, might I recommend webdoc.io. You can check them out at webdoc.io, coincidentally. It's a server platform built for PHP, Node.js developers that are set up, ready, and go. And it doesn't matter if you code in Ruby, Perl, Python. They're developer first, got a lot of resources. And not only that, they have custom pricing as well as low-cost pricing. As low as $4 a month. You can get it even cheaper with the coupon code that's in the description below. Check them out at webdoc.io.
Thanks. Yeah, we added more than 1,000 new coding challenges to the core curriculum. And now all of our projects have tests associated with them. So you'll be building a project and you'll have a whole test suite to verify that you're building stuff that actually conforms to the user stories. And we have 6 new developer certifications, which are more atomic than the old ones. So instead of just having the 3 original certifications, which are still available, and all the challenges, all the projects associated with those are still available in the curriculum. Instead of just having those 3, we've got 6 more technology specific and methodology specific certifications, which I can rattle off the list if you'd like.
Yeah, if you'd like to, so everyone knows what they can go and check out.
Sure. So the first one is responsive web design, which is just HTML and CSS. There's no JavaScript at all. And you'll learn some accessibility. You'll learn some applied visual design and learn some tools like CSS Grid. The second one is just JavaScript. It's called the JavaScript Algorithms and Data Structures. And it's just focused on, core programming, building up data structures and algorithms and functional programming, object-oriented programming, debugging, things like that. The third certification is front-end libraries, which covers things like React, Redux, Sass, jQuery, a whole lot of general tools that developers use frequently. And then the fourth certification is the data visualization certification, which covers applied data visualization and D3.js, which is probably the most popular SVG library in terms of creating graphics and interactive data visualizations. And then we have the backend focused certifications, which are the APIs and microservices certification, which is building up APIs and using Node.js, Express, MongoDB, and Mongoose, which is the ORM for MongoDB that we recommend. And then we have the information security and quality assurance certification. That's the 6th certification. And that covers Chai. It covers Helmet.js, bcrypt, authentication, a lot of advanced backend techniques and concepts that you should be familiar with.
Yeah, quite a bit. I've dove into pretty much everyone. Haven't finished all of them, but I'm pretty close to finishing about 3 or 4. And I don't know if I mentioned this, but back when it was still in beta, I was playing around with the responsive design and doing CSS Grid, and I actually took it to my tech lead and said, "Hey, I just was playing around with CSS Grid. What do you think about this?" And we've actually integrated it into one of our new greenfield construction or new greenfield development applications, and we're absolutely in love with it. And it's all just randomly, I'm playing around on the beta, and that was about 1.5 years ago, and I've been using it ever since on every single project.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I love CSS Grid, and I think that and just Flexbox and other native CSS tools that are coming out just make it easier and easier to just use stock CSS to build, state-of-the-art designs.
So one thing I've always found very interesting about FreeCodeCamp is that it's open source, and you especially got to see a lot of collaboration to get out such a massive change and such a massive update of content. And anytime you go for a very large scoped project, there's complications, and this FreeCodeCamp, I'm sure, is going to continue to evolve. So what are some things that maybe you've learned from delivering such a big application that you're like, okay, next time we're going to do this, or what worked well, what didn't work well?
Yeah, well, first of all, FreeCodeCamp was remarkably stable and bug free before we introduced the new platform and the new curriculum. So I can actually walk through time just to give you some context, like a timeline. So FreeCodeCamp in October of 2014, and by December of 2015, it became clear that we wanted to have some additional certifications and that we wanted to cover some emerging tools like React and Redux. So we started building projects first because the way FreeCodeCamp works, all the projects are required, and all the actual lessons that teach you how to build those projects are completely optional. And so a lot of experienced developers will come in and within the matter of a few days, they'll be able to earn a few certifications by just building these projects. Those projects are the evaluation criteria. That's what we care about. We're, as I like to say, we are implementation agnostic. We don't really care how you got good enough to implement something. We just care that you're able to implement it, and then we'll certify you. And that's what a certification is. It's proof that you are able to complete some task, as opposed to, a certificate, which you could get from sitting in a classroom for a few weekends. I have like a Linux certification, even though I didn't know very much about Linux, for example, when I was in. But anyway, so it became clear in December 2015 that we wanted to have these additional certifications beyond just at the time, we just had a front-end developer certification. So we built out the projects for those, and then started the very long process of actually building out the lessons for all those projects. And that took to create all the curricula for those. And then we rebuilt the FreeCodeCamp platform several times in order to make it faster and able to run like basically arbitrary JavaScript libraries like D3.js, and have that work and have it render everything properly on the code. We were using CodeMirror, which we swapped out for Microsoft's Monaco, which is basically VS Code in the browser, Visual Studio's code. And so now we use that, which is pretty cool. It's reasonably fast, surprisingly, and it's very accessible. We have a lot of people who are have disabilities, like several people who are completely blind, who work through FreeCodeCamp, and VS Code, the Monaco editor, is much more accessible for them when they're using screen readers to progress through the curriculum. So we also moved to a completely static architecture, Jamstack, which is JavaScript, APIs, and Markdown. And we just have an API that this static web page hits, and everything is, basically static HTML, CSS, JavaScript files that are pulled in through a CDN. And then all the processing happens on your browser side, and then it posts to our API like, hey, Dylan just finished this challenge. Let's write that to his profile. So the actual learning platform is static. We're trying to move a lot more of our services to static architecture because it just scales basically infinitely. And it doesn't matter where you are in the world, a CDN can pull the files and you can work through FreeCodeCamp, and also offline functionality, all that stuff. But to directly answer your question, the main things we learned along the process were it is good to have an extremely stable, bug-free build, if you will, so that you can put a ton of time and energy into building a much better version 2.0. One of the things, the biggest mistake I think I made was I kept telling people like, oh, I think we're almost done. So people, oh man, I couldn't announce any sort of, I couldn't even speculate, hey, it'd be really cool if we did this, because people will just be like, shut up and finish the new curriculum, Quincy. So I would say if you are in a position where you're working on a significant upgrade to an existing project, focus on working on it. Don't even think about hyping it up. Like, that was a huge mistake. I wish I hadn't hyped it at all, because it just created this kind of chilling effect where people were like, well, should I work through the current curriculum or should I wait? Because Quincy's saying it's going to be ready soon. I'm just going to, and they'll use it as an excuse to procrastinate their learning, which certainly happened in our case. A lot of people were just, oh, I don't have to sit down and code really hard. I can just wait and play video games. Okay, I'll do that. So that was the biggest lesson.
I'm sure it's hard too, because you're deep in the code, you're excited, you want to scream about it. It's like, oh man, I'm just so excited to release it, that like just keeping that to yourself at times. And it's happened like to me where I talk about stuff I have no business talking about on video, but I'm just so excited about it and I want to tell people about it that sometimes you get yourself in a little bit of trouble.
Yeah, and my advice as somebody who leads an open source project, just resist the temptation. I mean, what we're doing is technically all out in the open. If you really want to see how things are coming along, dive into our GitHub issues, look at our code base, see what's being committed. Now we've got like several different repos because we took the entire curriculum and turned it into an NPM module. So anybody can do npm install FreeCodeCamp curriculum. I don't actually know if that's the exact command, but it's on npm in the registry, and every time you push to that repo, it builds a new npm module. So people are pulling a slightly newer version of that. So you could incorporate FreeCodeCamp's curriculum into your application if, for example, you were building like a better looking FreeCodeCamp client. If you wanted to make it fancier, like we're all minimalistic and stuff, and just use the white. And a lot of people are like, oh, you should add some graphics or some sounds, stuff like that. And that's totally cool. If people want to create like a RPG of FreeCodeCamp or something like that, we're down. But now that we have all these different repos, that added a little bit of complexity. We are using some great tools. One of the big things we're pushing to do is be responsible for as little of the infrastructure as absolutely necessary. FreeCodeCamp's only 5 people. We've got millions of people using it every month, and only 5 people who are actively working full-time on it. And then we have this huge community that contributes to it. But because the actual number of people who have production access to the database is very, very small, the number of people and we do all these things intentionally, because the fewer people who have access to this sort of things, the less likely it is that there's going to be some catastrophic thing like that happened to GitLab a while back, right? GitLab, the guy accidentally deleted 8 hours worth of, or he deleted production. He just deleted their production database, and they had a backup that was like 8 hours old, and they were able to implement that, but they lost 8 hours of data, and there was a lot of downtime as a result at GitLab. So if the fewer people you have that are actively doing those kinds of things, the less likely those sorts of mistakes are. And when something goes wrong with your infrastructure, it's not just you SSHing into a box desperately at 4 a.m. Usually you've got like some organization who focuses on keeping things stable, keeping things up and running. So that's definitely a direction we're going in. The question of build or buy, the answer should almost always be buy. And for buy, that could mean just using a free open source implementation or one of the services. We've got a lot of sponsors like Algolia, like Auth0, like Netlify, that basically handle the infrastructure, and we just write the code and they handle the actual machines, which just reduces the likelihood of us doing something stupid. So the ultimate goal, of course, is for FreeCodeCamp to basically be a no DevOps organization, or no ops, as it's fashionably called, where we don't have to have a whole bunch of people, babysit Linux servers and making sure things don't fall down.
Now with such a small but important core team, and then so many people contributing, did you find yourself trying? Was it even possible to sort of try and apply traditional like agile methodologies or anything like that, or is it just like, look, it's just we're essentially an open source startup. Things are crazy. You do your best to organize it. Like how did that work out for you?
Yeah, so we had the benefit of first of all, I worked as a manager. Like I worked as a school director and as a teacher for like 10 years. So I've managed teams of like 30 plus people, and by extension, indirectly managed, tens people more than that, like about 100 people, including all the different people whom I ultimately had some sort of authority over in my role as a school director. So I've got some managerial experience, and I know like the obvious do's and don'ts. And working in open source, it's the Wild West. There are emerging best practices, things like that. FreeCodeCamp is completely distributed. There's no office. I'm in my office. I'm in the spare bedroom that I use as an office. And everybody is distributed around the world. I haven't actually met anybody in person except for Bo Carnes, who runs FreeCodeCamp's YouTube channel and is a prolific course creator himself. So as a result, and I am going to meet everybody in New York City this week, which I'm very excited about. We're all flying out to New York City for this, the top contributor party. But because of that, the fact that we're all over the world, we're remote, it's hard to do like a traditional, we've got our burn down charts and we're going to do this sprint and all that. I'm not saying it's impossible, but if we had like a ton of developers and everybody was focused on developing, then it might make sense. We'd have like 4 or 5 people who were doing a sprint together. In practice, because our organization is so outsized in its influence, and yet we have such a small full-time staff, just 5 people, including myself, people do agile ownership of different tasks. So, for example, Abby owns the Medium publication, and she owns the podcast. And by that, she essentially makes all the important decisions and the day-to-day operation of it, and she oversees contributions to those things. Bo owns the YouTube channel. Murugesh in Pune, India, he owns the GitHub organizations and all the open issues and pull requests. And Stuart owns the code base, so to speak, and make sure that new project development and things like that. He makes a lot of those decisions. And then even though they're owners of different things, and I own support. I own, for example, like the email blast that I send out every week and things like that. And so even though from an agile standpoint, we all own different aspects of FreeCodeCamp, we all constantly talk to one another and get feedback from one another, and there's discussion around those specific projects within FreeCodeCamp. And we're all kind of collaborating on different things, but we're reporting to a different manager on each of those. So like when it comes to issues of the Medium publication, I generally defer to Abby. So if we were all working on, like, for example, we're working on a new initiative that for the reasons I discussed earlier, I'm not going to talk too much about it because I don't want to get people all hyped up and then have it take longer than I expect. But we're all working on that initiative. And so me, Stuart, and Murugesh especially are hopping on calls daily to just prod that along. We've got a Trello board and all that stuff, but there's not really a sprint where we're building a new project from scratch essentially. So later there'll be like additional feature development, and that'll probably be done kind of in a sprint manner where we put a bunch of stuff on and when can we actually ship this. Now within Agile, there are all these principles of like continuous delivery, and the notion that you should be, releasing a new version of an app several times a day. And we certainly do that. We use, CI, CD, we use Travis CI, and whenever a build passes and we merge something, it gets automatically deployed to Netlify and places like that. So we're doing a lot of Agile, but we're not necessarily doing it the exact way that, say, a consultancy like Pivotal Labs, a Rails development shop. They have a team, they meet with their stakeholders, and everything works like clockwork. And they iterate rapidly on the project, and they ship the code, and they've got like these firm timetables and all this stuff because they planned everything out in terms of like developer hours and how many points it would be. And then they've got the burn down charts and all those things. So that's kind of a long answer. We do apply a lot of agile principles, but we're not doing proper sprints like a lot of organizations would.
Well, a lot of organizations aren't doing agile properly in general. That's for a separate conversation. One thing I wanted to inquire about. I'm not quite sure how often you speak at conferences, but I've noticed at least one conference where I was like, I should go see Quincy talk. How has that been? That's sort of kind of be a surreal thing at times where you've sort of become this, you're essentially the face of a large organization and project. And what's that been like?
It's been a blast. So I just went to Australia, to Melbourne, or Melbourne as the locals call it, last month, and I had such a great time. One of the FreeCodeCamp alumni down there, she went from being a trucker to working as a software engineer, and now she's progressed even further within her career. She is a very inspiring young lady who has had a very dramatic career transition. She didn't go to college or anything. She just picked up software development. She attended the coding boot camp as well to complement working through FreeCodeCamp. And she's at a big name. I'll go ahead and say she's at Xero, Xero, which is this very well-liked accounting software that a lot of my friends use for their small businesses. So she put together a conference with one of her friends called LevelsConf, and it was amazing. It was designed for like people who are around the junior developer-ish level, people who are just getting into the field, and then people who've gotten their first job, but not necessarily people who are like 3 or 4 years into their developer career. And I flew out there. I was one of, I think, 8 or 9 different speakers for the day. And it was just a day-long conference. And they let me go first. That was the keynote. And it was just a blast. I mean, to meet those people, be able to hang out with them and learn about Australia, because I didn't know much about it other than just my wife had been there and she brought Tim Tams home from Australia, which are these nice little chocolate covered biscuits that are extremely addictive. So that was pretty amazing. We had a similar thing in 2017 in November, FreeCodeConf, which is a conference that was put together by a bunch of campers in Toronto and a local coding boot camp. And that was amazing as well. And then I'm going to be traveling a lot just for FreeCodeCamp related events in the coming months. And so I don't do a lot of conferences. It is a huge amount of effort to like recalibrate after jet lag, and after like when you're doing a conference, you basically have to drop everything and just stay focused on that. But once the conference, once you're there at the conference, getting to talk to people in person, have high bandwidth communication, which is beyond what you can generally accomplish through, GitHub issues or through emails. It makes a big difference. And I strongly encourage people to go to conferences. There's a whole new kind of breed of low cost conferences that are designed with the actual person who's attending paying in mind. So instead of being like a $1,000 Salesforce ticket, I don't know, Salesforce Dreamforce, I think is their big conference where they rent out all of San Francisco. They literally blockade streets and just have the conference in the streets. That's how big it is, because it's thousands of people. Those, like, it's the employer who's paying, and getting to go to Dreamforce is like a perk for their team. And you get to go there and have, it's a big party, right? But for people who are paying their own way, that's prohibitively expensive. But if you can get the ticket down to, $100, $200, like Codeland, like LevelsConf, like a lot of these other conferences, the FreeCodeConf in Toronto was completely free. If you can do that, then you can bring a lot more people in, and it can be a much more inclusive conference that's not just a bunch of established software developers. And there's nothing wrong with going to those conferences either. I would strongly recommend going to the hackathons that often precedes those conferences. Like I went to the, for example, I went to the API Conf, which was run by, something web, movable web. I can't remember the exact name of the website, but it's focused on programmable web. It's focused on APIs. It's like a big API directory. They have conferences. And I was able to participate in the hackathon, and we actually won the hackathon and won like thousands of dollars. And then we also got tickets to go to the conference for free. And that didn't cost anything. It just took time. So like a lot of times if you go to a conference, same thing with TechCrunch. I went to the TechCrunch hackathon and got free tickets to TechCrunch for participating. So there are a lot of opportunities to go to conferences. I strongly encourage people going. As far as participating in conferences, it can be a huge career booster. If you're relatively early in your career and you want to make a name for yourself, specialize in some specific thing. Maybe it's, graphics and lighting. Maybe you're specializing in functional programming and you just have understand all the best practices of functional programming and worked with some of the functional focused languages like Scala or Haskell or something like that. Then you can potentially get invited to conferences and they'll fly you out, put you up, and you can just go and hang out and meet other people and build your network and also just travel. It's like a free way to travel. So I think conferences are a huge opportunity, and I think there are going to be more and more exciting conferences that are going to crop up. That are going to recur every year.
Yeah, conferences are something I'm trying to integrate into my sort of game plan in the next year of not only attending, but just before even speaking at conferences, going to meetups and like speaking there and trying to give presentations. Like, there's 700, 800 videos up on YouTube. You think you could go to one meetup and just talk about something for 30 minutes, but yeah, I had a question I wanted to ask you, and this could relate from a software perspective as FreeCodeCamp, but as your managerial perspective as well when you're doing in the education industry. And one thing I've been focused a lot on, and I think it kind of gets overshadowed by technical skills and by just the code, is sort of professionalism in software development. I was just curious, what's sort of your take as someone who has, I haven't had management experience, but I thought you might have a unique take on that.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the company's culture. If you're having to wear like a dress shirt and slacks to work every day, or if you're able to wear just t-shirt and jeans, I think that regardless of the feel of professionalism, I strongly encourage you to not get too comfortable and to always be on your best behavior. I can tell you, like, even though FreeCodeCamp's completely remote and it's completely casual in terms of the expectations, and like people just work at their own schedule. We don't have sick days or vacation leave or even set hours. You do the work, right? And so we're not micromanaging you as a person and how you get things done. We're leaving that largely to you. But all of our calls are very, courteous, and you're not going to hear a lot of swearing. You're not going to have people interrupting one another. People are prompt. They're on time. I think all of those basic things are pretty universal, regardless of which culture you go to. You want to be a professional, and that a professional doesn't mean wearing a suit. A professional means listening to what people are doing and being respectful of people's time.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you sort of made that distinction, because it is astounding how few people don't respect other people's time and show up late to meetings or not at all. One last thing. I know we were saying that we weren't going to give any hints about upcoming stuff, but is there anything you'd like to share, chum the waters a little bit, for lack of a better term? Because I know, FreeCodeCamp is an evolving item, as software is. Anything that you want people to look forward to, or stuff that maybe is out that doesn't get as much attention as like the certifications or something like that?
Oh yeah, FreeCodeCamp Guide is growing really rapidly. Guide.freecodecamp.org. I think we're up at like 4,000 articles on different programming topics. Let's say you want to learn a little bit about C++ or Python, and you don't want to invest like a tremendous amount of time in buying a book or getting a course. You just want to get a quick primer, or you need to look something up. That's a great place to find a no nonsense, easy to understand, unpretentious explanation. It's not like going to Wikipedia where you've got like tons of outbound links to like definitions and things like that just to be able to understand. Like, we're not looking to exactly define things. We're looking to give you a good enough explanation so you can keep moving. So if you overhear something in a cubicle or at your office, you overhear people talking about Kubernetes, you're like, what's Kubernetes? Go to guide.freecodecamp.org and look it up. And I say that, I'm not actually sure if we have a lot of articles on Kubernetes yet. But if there's not one, just contribute it. We've had thousands of people contribute to this, or more than 1,000 people at this point have had an accepted pull request. And the idea is basically just, it's just like Wikipedia, but for lay people and focused on technology. Giving you a good enough explanation as quickly as possible.
I think that's a great way to sort of dip your toes into open source and contribute as well, because I know it's a very intimidating item. But when you're updating text and context and maybe not code, it'll be a nice way for you to sort of get your feet wet.
Yeah, and you can do the entire thing in GitHub's UI as well. If you don't want to clone the whole repo, you can clone the repo and you can contribute articles that way. But it might be faster to just take like a stub from one of those articles, click edit right in GitHub's UI, and go in and just use Markdown to like update it and flesh out an article. Bam, hit the open pull request button, and then somebody will review your pull request, merge it, and your contributions will be live. You'll get the GitHub credit, everything. So that's one thing we're really excited about. The other thing that I want to say is like FreeCodeCamp's YouTube channel. We're very excited about how much new stuff we've been putting on there. We put like a 4.5-hour Python primer a couple days ago. We've got a Ruby primer if you're interested in learning Ruby. We've been publishing articles about SQL or videos about SQL, GraphQL, all kinds of stuff. And we're also publishing a lot of good technical talks. So all that stuff is, right there. We don't even run any ads. We're a nonprofit. We're completely supported by donors, so we don't even have to run ads on that channel. And the other thing about the YouTube channel is Code Radio. Have you listened to Code Radio yet, Dylan?
So I am one of those degenerate developers that does everything except listen to podcasts. So I have yet to do it, unfortunately.
So Code Radio isn't podcast. It's a 24/7
Oh,
live stream.
the music. Yes, I do jump in there on occasion, and I throw up the live streams on there, and I creep, and then I'll say something, and then people will start conversations, and I have to go back to work, and I just hide the chat. But it's really good. I love it.
So we're significantly expanding the music library. I think we've got about 1,300-ish songs in there currently. And they're all like these kind of jazzy, down-tempo, lo-fi, hip-hop type music. It's all curated by a DJ based out of Los Angeles, Lawrence Yao. And we are just upping the music. We're increasing the Nightbot integration, so you'll be able to interact with Nightbot, and we're going to be putting a lot of effort into trying to raise awareness of that. So jump in there when you're coding. If there's anything you don't like, just hit exclamation point dislike. If there's any song you do like, exclamation point like, and that'll help us kind of fine tune the playlist over time. And we're working on a lot of other exciting ways to incorporate that into FreeCodeCamp and to add additional functionality to that. That's something that we're serious about. We want to have like a global 24/7 radio station just for people who are coding and learning to code.
Yeah, I listen to music every time I develop. And so some people do, some people don't. But for me, I find it one of it sort of helps me get into that zone of I'm in the matrix, essentially. It's how I like to think of it. Like, I'm there. I get it. It's clicking. It's cool too, because you have other that's a lot of people listen to these live radio shows, but not always do they have a chat that's focused on software at the same time. So you can ask questions in there as well, which is something I see people just having even philosophical conversations, which is cool.
Yeah, and sometimes the chat can get pretty hairy. We do have a strong code of conduct, so if you see anybody like just being a douche, just I think you can just mention it. And there are enough people in there that we should have like a moderator. If you are a regular in the chat room and you want to become a moderator, let me know. We could always use help with moderation.
Start dropping the ban hammer.
Yeah, we drop it. We drop it all the time. We ban tons of people every day on Facebook, and especially on Facebook, but also like other places.
Professionalism is online as well, people.
Yeah. I mean, treat every interaction you have online. Like, don't say somebody online that you wouldn't say to their face.
Well, I'm very excited to see what's going. I know we talked about stuff that you're working on, or stuff that's out and not working on. I don't think I missed that, but we'll save that for the announcement. And it's always a pleasure, and hopefully we'll be able to do this again soon.
Absolutely, Dylan. Keep making these awesome videos, and thanks again.
Yeah, thank you. Hey guys, thanks for watching the video. Don't forget to check out my 100 Algorithm Challenge course. Get you prepped for those technical interviews to make sure you get nice offers. I actually just added some new content to it so you can get prepared for those technical phone screens as well. There's a link in the description to get it for just $9.99.